and welcome to the Self-Aware Entrepreneur Show with Lee Chambers. And today I have the pleasure of a guest who I've been looking to speak to on the airways for over 6 months. She was originally due to come on with me on Ribble FM last year, but lockdown quashed that. But in all beauty of reality, things will come at a time when they're ready. And I have the pleasure of having with me today Kelly Swingler, CEO of the Chrysalis Crew, owner of her own coaching business, and just generally an amazing woman. I'm a big fan, and I don't look up to many people. I'm a bit of an iconoclast. I'm a bit of you shouldn't look to other people for inspiration. You should find it within yourself. But actually, Kelly, the story's just amazing. She is multi-talented, very vocal in a great way, but most importantly, so authentic. So, Kelly, it's been 6 months in the coming, but appreciate you being with me today.
No, I'm really excited to see where this conversation can go. Thank you. That was a lovely little intro, wasn't it? Thank you.
Oh yeah, and so much better than the typical scripted. And this is what she does.
But you're sick of that networking. What do you do? Like, shut up.
Oh, you got 60 seconds. So Kelly, actually, that leads us into the first part. And just tell us a little bit about what you actually currently do.
Yeah, so currently I am a coach. So I work with, and I've been thinking about this over the last few months. So during lockdown, I started as a separate coaching business to the Chrysalis Crew. So Chrysalis Crew is just over 7 years old. And the Chrysalis Crew is really a people and change consultancy with a huge mission of changing the world of work. That was what we were founded on. That is absolutely what we are still driving to do. But I think probably since 2015, although I ignored it for lots of years, I had this niggle that I then also needed to start like a Kelly Swingler something. And it was like, no. And I started it last June. And I initially was working and still do work with a lot of HR professionals. I work with a lot of CEOs on really helping them to get to who they are at the core.
Yeah.
But I think over the last few weeks, I'm working with a few people at the moment to really help me kind of elevate that as a brand and tell a bit more of that story.
Yeah.
And actually, I think what's coming out of me is the people that I work with are really the change makers. They are the change makers that want to change the world of work, that want to have a big impact on the world in terms of what it is that they do. So I suppose I am a coach for the change makers at the moment in terms of the Kelly Swingler stuff. And I'm just absolutely loving it. Absolutely loving it.
Yeah, and I'd almost see it, Kelly, that you are the torch that sets fire to those who make change.
Thanks. I'll take that. I'll take that.
And I think at this point, we actually have to take a pause and say thank you to the amazing Sualti for actually getting us together. Because, again, sometimes to get two people in a room, it actually requires someone with a keen eye to see people who have that synergy and have similar values. And Sue, you get your special mention right here on the show.
Thank you very much. Yeah, she's definitely been persevering in terms of this. I think this year and last year, we've got to do it now. You've got to do it now. You've got it. So yes, thank you, Sue.
Yeah, super. So Kelly, obviously, to get into that position where you've got a company that does things setting precedents like the 4-day work week, and actually, more often than not, living by the company's values and turning away clients who don't find the resonance, ensuring that you work with who you want to, the change makers, not the pedal bikers, and actually being in a place where you live those values on a day-to-day basis and really put them out there. Sometimes when they're breaking down stigmas, going against convention and breaking that conformity. So I'd like to know a little bit more about the journey that got you to that place where you authentically express yourself and say, look, this is how I feel it should be.
Yeah, it's like how long is a piece of string? I know we haven't got a day for that one, but I think for me, I suppose if you were to speak to my parents, I think they would say that actually I have always been pioneer is probably too strong a word, but I think I have always been curious. I've always been challenging. Actually, why is it that we do things that way? Why can't we change it? Can we make it easier? Can we do this? Can we do that? Really asking questions. And I think probably sometimes to the point of my parent being like, Kelly, just shut up and do it. But I think that also kind of stuck with me through school, and I think I got a bit of a kind of nickname, if you like, and a bit of a reputation as being a complete rebel and a bit of a troublemaker.
Mm-hmm.
But actually it was just challenging. You know, I think particularly at secondary school, I think if you look at a lot of my secondary school, you know, when you get the class photos, you have to kind of line up in height order.
Yep.
For your class photos. And I was always dressed in an inappropriate not inappropriate jumper, but something that wasn't school regulation.
Yeah.
Because, you know, I used to see kids that were getting sent home for not having the right shoes on, for not having the right blouse on, for not having the right whatever. And you know, sometimes that I knew that their parents couldn't afford to get them that. Whereas actually, you know, I was moved up a year at school. I was always in a lot of the top sets. And I suppose from my perspective, I wanted to demonstrate that the colour of my jumper had bugger all to do with my ability to learn in a classroom.
Yeah.
And I used to challenge that with a lot of teachers. And I think a lot of that came into the workplace with me. Initially, I started in retail, John Lewis partnership. I started with Waitrose and John Lewis.
Yep.
I had wanted to go into law and then realised after 2 lots of work experience that was just not for me. Didn't know what it was that I wanted to do. So after my A-levels, I signed up and was recruited into a management training scheme with Waitrose.
Yeah.
Fell pregnant unexpectedly with twins, had my twins 3 months after my 20th birthday. And then so I transferred to John Lewis and had the opportunity to then start to select which specialism I wanted to go into. So it could have been merchandising, could have stayed on the shop floor, could have done lots of different things. And for me, that was really where that was my driver into HR. So from a training perspective, from a development perspective, from a recruitment perspective, I very, very early on was involved in kind of mass assessment centres, looking at lots of different ways of doing things. But that driver for me was really about wanting to stop what I still class as this kind of Monday to Friday dying syndrome.
Yeah.
I was sick and tired of sitting at the pub or the hairdressers or with friends or family, and every single one of them moaning about their boss, their pay, their job, or whatever else was going on. And I just kind of actually, you know, in HR, I've got an opportunity to change that. I can make the workplaces better. I can stop all of this crap with managers that's going on. And I can start to drive a lot of this change. And that was really the kind of driving force that got me into HR. And I suppose in some respects then for the last 20 odd years, my focus has been on creating better places to work, doing things differently, open communication, open culture, stopping all of the red tape and crap that so many organisations put in place. Like just, I suppose, stripping a lot of that back, going right back to basics, treating people as people, recognizing that it is the people ultimately that make up our businesses, both our customers and our people. And that's been the driving force for me. And then, 7 years ago, left corporate after a huge burnout. I think the culture, the toxic culture that I was in played a big part in that burnout, not just elements of my well-being. And I just got to a point looking at what some other consultancies were doing and just thinking there has to be a more ethical way of doing this.
Yeah.
And as a result of that, Chrysalis Crew was born, and 7 and a bit years later, here we are.
Yeah, no, and that's just a magic story in itself. But what I really want to kind of dig into is I very much appreciate that curious nature as a child. Like in a very similar way, I got into some really interesting conversations and places, and just as much trouble for continually asking questions. And the real beauty of that is then taking that out into the world as a young adult. You almost get your fire rained on a little bit, because it's not common that someone comes into a relatively junior role and it's like, right, but why is that process like that? I think it should be.
And I think to some extent that kind of followed me a lot throughout my internal career. So I think people liked, I'll say this, everybody will be like, no, she's definitely not. But I am an introvert and I recharge on my own, but I am able to get the best out of people. And that curious streak really does drive me. Sometimes it's draining. And that's why even more I need that kind of alone time to be able to kind of do that recharge. But I think what I always had, interviews, I was headhunted for some of the roles that I went into, and everybody wanted my energy and my enthusiasm and my curiosity. And my creative nature and the fact that I was doing things differently and the fact that I would drive change and champion change and be able to get the best out of people. And then I'd be in the role and so we love the energy, but it needs to be toned down. We love the creativity, but we want to tone it down. We love the ideas, but you need to slow them down. And it was kind of every role then, I think it was like, it was like you were being suffocated that little bit more into this box that we want everybody else to fit into. And kind of this is where, because I remember going to a best companies lunch, so one of the companies that I was head of HR at.
Yeah.
Number 1 times 100 company. We've done a lot of work to get there, 3-star kind of best business accreditation. Yeah. I remember my CEO asking me to go to one of these best business lunches with him in London. But I was given an instruction by his PA that I needed to go dressed in black, right? I needed a black suit because everything that before that had been like colour, right? It was colour. You need to go in a black suit, Kelly. And I was, I did go in a black suit, but I had this bright green neck scarf on with this huge bow. Yeah. And I had like green shoes and this green bag. So I had done my bit and put my black suit on, but I wasn't going to compromise completely. But I remember walking into this room for this lunch and there was just this sea of like black, grey and navy suits. And I was like, I was just like, it honestly felt like just all of the colour and all of the energy had been sucked out. Yeah. But I did also get a feel that actually for a lot of us that go into some of these positions, that is what happens to us. We get some of that colour sucked out of us because this is the leadership box that you have to fit in and you have to tick. And this is the management box that you have to fit in and we have to tick. Actually, for me, it's about ripping up that, like managing like there is no box, bringing out actually who are you at the core, right? Lee, how can we bring out the best in you as you are for you to be the best leader, for you to be the best manager, not looking at this tick box and saying, okay, Lee, we need you to fulfill all of these things, but actually who is Lee and how can we get Lee to be the best leader ever by allowing Lee to be more of who Lee is. That for me is the big driver.
Yeah, and that's absolutely massive because like we know a lot in a lot of places, you almost have to leave the human being at the door. Yeah. And that kind of, you walk in and everyone has the typical coloured suit on, but it almost feels like life's turned your colour off and suddenly everything's black and white and everything's actually quite polar and all those lovely shades of grey in the middle, but they don't make suits in that colour.
No, they probably do. But a lot of that, I think we do try to quash that, and I think again, and I think it's Patty McCord that has said it. I think it was her that I saw it from a few years ago, but it was like I think she put it much more eloquently than I ever had. But I think a lot of the time we talk about business fit when we're recruiting people. We talk about fit. When we're looking at culture, we talk about culture fit. Yeah. And, I don't know about anybody else, but I think actually whether it's an outfit or whether it's, whether it is a person going into an organization, I don't really think we want fit. I don't think you can grow if you're fitting. If you put on a pair of trousers that fit you perfectly, there is no room to grow. There's no maneuver room. There's no any of that. And I think as organizations, again, we've got to stop trying to put square pegs in round holes and actually embrace that square pegs belong in square holes. And we need a few more square holes within our organizations to help us grow, to help us be truly inclusive and truly diverse and really change everything that needs to be changed about the world of work. And I think if we continue to look for the next grey suit that can fit in this, in this little peg, we're not going to evolve enough when we're not going to evolve in the way that we need to.
Yeah, and that energy, that appreciation, and just that ability to look slightly differently, break those boundaries outside the box. It's clear, Kelly, that that is what you are, champion, and that's what you do. I just want to take a step back again into your story, and obviously having twins at 20, but still building and elevating that career. And being someone who, relatively young in HR is probably looking at some of these dusty policy booklets and some of these typical PDPs and appraisals that are just, seem to have not changed since your grandparents were alive. And I can imagine that there's probably some challenges in that kind of work-life harmony between being a mother and being a very ambitious worker. Can you tell me a little bit how you manage those challenges?
I probably have to say I don't think I would have been able to do it without the support of my parents and my son's dad. We were married for a number of years, but I do think without the support of them, I don't think I would have necessarily been able to do it. I do remember, particularly because of the age that we were at. So at the time that we had the boys' dad was again on a kind of trainee scheme.
Yeah.
I was earning more than him, but then obviously we had issues with childcare. He wasn't even driving at the time. He decided that, driving wasn't necessarily a priority for him. So I think he was probably 21, 22 before he started driving. So kind of taking the kids to childminders and all of those sorts of things during the day had, all fell to me. But we had started to get in. I mean, our nursery fees alone were like £800 a month. You then got, mortgage. We bought our first house. We had mortgage. We had a car. We had bills. We had food. We had everything that needed to go in. And our nursery fees were about £800 a month. And we had started to get into the point of where we were literally spending more than we had coming in every month. And I can remember like, what can we do? What is available? What could we try to change? And my mum had been in the civil service for years. She was a manager of the job centre before she started working for ACAS. And my mum said to me, go and speak to one of these kind of parental advisors at the job centre. And I was basically told, you got two options. You can resign from your job and wait, I think it was 6 or 9 weeks or something, wait 6 or 9 weeks to get some benefits. Or you could get the sack from your job. And if you got the sack from your job, then you'd get benefits immediately. And I was like, well, basically what you're telling me is the only way that I can get any help whatsoever is if I walk out of my role or get the sack. Like, okay. So I think longer term thinking was just actually, we just got to suck this up. We've got to suck it up. So we got in a huge amount of debt. We continued to work and push. And I think I then was pushing even harder. My career prospects, my job prospects were much better than the boy's dad was. And a lot of my focus went on to my work, my career, ensuring that I was getting, the right salary, pushing.
Yeah.
And I think as I look back on it now, I have to start, I wouldn't change anything. I think if I changed anything, I wouldn't be where I am today.
Yeah.
And so I am grateful and appreciative of, I've worked bloody hard to get where I am. And I truly value all of that. But I really wish somebody earlier on in my career had really asked me kind of what it was that I was pushing for, or how can we help you? How can we help you make this a bit easier? Because honestly, between the age of 20 and 30, whilst, between my sons being born and 10 years old, I was really, really struggling.
Yeah.
Not at work. Like the work was the easy bit, and I could go into robot mode and I could change, you mentioned performance appraisals. Like I haven't completed a performance appraisal since 2008. Burnt them as long as, since, probably as when I started burning handbooks, I was burning appraisals. And I knew I wanted to do that differently, but actually in a lot of ways, the work stuff came easy.
Yeah.
The payoff, if you like, with a lot of that was my own mental health. I think if you had slowed me down, I kind of say it a bit like a wind up toy. Mm-hmm. If it had got to the point where that, that winding had stopped, I would have crashed earlier. I'd have crashed a lot earlier than 2013. Yeah. I kept going. And I know you and I have spoken about this, and I know I speak about this to a lot of other people. I think I would really love for leaders, for HR professionals, for managers, to colleagues, for friends, family, speak to or pay attention to your overperformers. And I don't mean just like those that are doing really, like the overperformers. Speak to them, because in a lot of cases we are overperforming and pushing.
Yeah.
And we are close to breaking point. And I don't think anybody had noticed that at the time. So I just think pay that attention to your people. Organizations love people like me, you know, that are gonna, it will literally give their right arm and their right leg to continue growing, to continue doing a brilliant job, to be going over and above everything. Like, we love people like me, but what we're not paying enough attention to is the impact that that has on the person.
Yeah.
And we need to start doing more to recognize that and then putting the support in the right places.
Yeah, and that's something that, you know, I'm incredibly passionate about. And I just want you to kind of dig a little bit deeper into how that, if you've got an employee, for example, who is a bit of a perfectionist, is an overachiever, is kind of effectively overperforming all the time, and is someone who is quite competitive and is looking to continually push themselves, they never appear in the KPIs as someone who might need a little bit of help.
No.
In fact, sometimes, more often than not, they look like they're the ones who, I can just leave them because they're hitting every target and beyond.
Yeah.
And I will focus my attention on trying to drive those who appear to not be driving as fast.
Yeah.
But can you kind of explain to me and our audience a little bit more about how, in a toxic workplace culture, those people can almost toast themselves to a crisp in the pursuit of, you know, performance?
Yeah, and I think it actually, in a lot of cases, I think in those toxic cultures, it is a lot easier for those people to continue because we don't necessarily get feedback.
Yeah.
We don't really get told that we're doing a good job. We're not being told that we're doing a bad job. We are just kind of left in the middle, and nobody's saying anything. And I get this even with a lot of my coaching clients now.
Yeah.
It's just like, I just want somebody to give me some kind of feedback. It's like, are you asking for? Yeah, I've started asking, and I just get, well, you know, you're doing a really great job. Like, that's not helpful.
Yeah.
And we do get left. So I do think the starting point is speak to those people. Don't assume that they are okay, and they may well be okay. They may absolutely be okay. I am never going to be somebody that works at 10 miles an hour. I'm always going to be going at 200, maybe, you know, I've been up to 500, I think, in the past. But I'm always going to be going, I'm always going to be fast. That's part of my makeup. And I'm always looking for that next thing. But I've stopped doing that now. Whereas I've stopped doing it I think I've stopped doing it for the same reasons. I think doing it whilst I was doing it was because I did want to prove that I was good enough. I wanted to prove that I could do it. After having my sons, the amount of people that said to me, you cannot continue with your career, and you cannot, you know, you cannot be, you know, you won't be a young mum and progress your career. And I think part of that driver for me was, I will bloody well show you that I can do it.
Yeah.
And I did it. If you tell me I can't do something, I will show you that I can. But really, there was no check-in.
Yeah.
There was none of that. And I think the starting point has to be understanding what is causing that for some of our people. A lot of that for me was that kind of, I suppose we call it now imposter syndrome, but genuinely thinking I was going to get caught out. I wasn't good enough. I wasn't qualified enough. I didn't have enough experience. I didn't have all of these things. And I sit back and look at it now and think, bloody hell, like, some people would give their right arm to have what you had at the time and what you were doing.
Yeah.
But I still didn't have that realization of, actually, I'm good at what I'm doing. And this is the reason that I'm doing it. It was always to prove. And I think, again, when I speak to a lot of people in that boat, a lot of us are trying to prove something. We may not know what, and we may not know who to, but we will damn well, you know, kill ourselves in the process of trying to prove something to someone that we are good enough.
Yeah, and I think that, again, like in my own experience, that doubt, other people saying that you couldn't, is incredibly motivating and gives you a lot of jet fuel.
Yeah, absolutely.
But like anything, there becomes a point where you skyrocket and then you're kind of left floating. And at that point, and that gap for floating, sometimes there's a conversation to be had, meeting people where they are at. And again, it's literally just that check-in and appreciation at that point is so valuable. And
and I think just, it is that check-in is absolutely vital. I was going to say something, I've kind of lost a bit of my train of thought, but it is vital. It is important. And it can be, this is what the thoughts back, but it can be really lonely.
Yeah.
I had at some point colleagues telling me, you need to slow down because you are making us look bad. I had colleagues that would stop inviting me to meetings because, you know, of my pace, of my ideas. We don't want Kelly stealing that. And I never stole the limelight, but it was like, if we get Kelly involved, it won't be our idea. Like, we want to show that we can do this. So I did have colleagues telling me, slow down, you're making us look bad. I had colleagues that would stop inviting me to stuff. I've had all of that throughout my career, and that can make it quite lonely and quite isolating.
Yeah.
And I think, again, in some respects, like the better you get, the more senior you get, it more people want to compete with you. I'm not a competitor. I want to collaborate. I don't care if you're doing exactly the same as me or something similar to me. I genuinely want to collaborate. How can we change the world of work together? Whereas even now, no, we're going to do it my way. It's my clients, my ideas, I don't want to steal any of your ideas. I've got plenty of my own. Yeah. But we could do something together. And I had a lot of that throughout the workplace, where actually a lot of people didn't want that because they wanted the glory, they wanted the limelight, they wanted the conversations. And a lot of the times they would get a lot of the credit because I was just doing what I was doing and wasn't going, hi, can I have some feedback, please? And can somebody have a gold star? I wasn't doing that. I was kind of delivering and taking more of a back seat, whereas a lot of other people were delivering and being like, hi, guess what I've just achieved? And look how brilliant I am. And I'm like, that's not my bag.
No. And you know what? It's that self-awareness as well to realise that and look back and reflect and start to, help the future HR professional start to build that into their kind of toolkit, really.
Absolutely.
It's kind of vital. And what I want to say is we're coming towards the end now, Kelly, and just your journey and your insights, there's so much there. Anyone who listens to this on replay, I'm sure you'll be, taking away, scribbling notes, because, I am. But ultimately, Kelly, now's a chance for you to really share a few of your kind of gems of wisdom, things that you'd want future HR professionals, people coming into the industry to think about. And on the other side, MDs and HRDs who have probably gone through a lot this past year, what should they be thinking about for the future?
That's probably it. That could all be like a whole conversation in itself, Lee.
Of course.
I think the first one for MDs and for people professionals, I think the first one for me has to be about your own well-being, protecting your own well-being. Any role, and again, I think for HR professionals and MDs, CEOs, leaders of any kind, a lot of the time we think that we have to keep going, keep pushing, ensuring that we're putting other people first all of the time. In doing that, actually, though, we are role modeling a really toxic type of behavior. We are role modeling that it is okay to kill yourself at your desk. We are role modeling that you should be working 24 hours a day. We need to shift that. If we focus on our own well-being first, if we take those proper breaks, we prioritize sleep, we ensure that we're eating properly, walking, lunchtime, doing whatever it is that we need to do, we role model a better type of behavior for others. So the first thing for me is around those non-negotiables in terms of your well-being. And I don't care what level of any business you're at, that for me is the starting point. I think then from there, again, for both parties, really, for me, I think it is about communication.
Yeah,
we are really brilliant, particularly in HR and at leadership level. We are really, really brilliant at sitting around tables and saying we need new policies, we need new rules, we need new ways of working, we need all of this stuff. And we're going to create it in secret, and then we're just going to launch it to the business. Yeah. And then we wonder why nobody's excited about this brand new policy that we've just created for them. We've got to get better at communicating and co-creating and collaborating with our people. So speaking to Lee and saying, right, okay, Lee, there's a bit of an issue in your team. What is it that we can do to fix it? Let's speak to you. Let's speak to your team. Let's speak to some of your colleagues. What are we going to do to resolve it together? That's not to say that it necessarily slows things down. But I think if we take that time at the beginning, it will then roll out much, much better. And I think in that we have to be more, I call these hot conversations that we have within the Chrysalis crew. For me, it's about honesty, openness and transparency.
Yeah.
That's how we have to communicate. Hiding things, not being honest, not being open, and not being transparent creates toxicity in workplaces.
Yeah.
It takes, those sorts of things. If you think of any relationship in your life, whether that is with your kids, your friends, your spouse, your boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, anybody, not doing those three things damages relationships, and it's no different in the workplace. So we need more open, honest and transparent conversations, or honest, open and transparent conversations, much more collaboration, better communication, and a huge focus on our own well-being.
Yeah, that's massive. Again, if you're going to take anything away, non-negotiable self-care habits, just build them in. And hot conversations, I absolutely love that, because it's true. Just think about how much, even if we look at it in pure business efficiency and productivity, when you're not honest, open and transparent, every process gets affected along that way. And it just...
Absolutely. You're wasting time, you're wasting money, you're wasting effort. It's not worth it.
And in the remote and hybrid world that we've moved into, that's even more prevalent. And yeah, I mean, that's absolutely amazing. So Kelly, this half an hour has been full of value, full of insight, and the story binds it all together beautifully. I just want to ask now, what is coming for yourself, your coaching business, and the Crystalline Crew in the next 12 months?
Oh, wait, again, how long have you got? I think for Chrysalis Crew, we'll just continue to grow. We will continue to do what we're doing. Huge focus at the moment, again, on well-being for HR professionals.
Yeah.
We recognise and have done for years that the well-being of HR ultimately has a bigger, massive impact on the well-being across every single organisation. So we're continuing to support HR professionals through that, and obviously we'll continue to grow. Similarly, again, with my coaching stuff, as I said, I'm going through an exciting rebrand at the moment, working with some amazing women to really help to tell that story a little bit more and bring out a bit more of my energy in terms of what that's going to look like. There are, dare I say it, 5 books that are on the horizon, and will be coming out as kind of 5-book series that will be coming out. I won't share too much information on any of those, but there is a 5-book series that will come out, and 2 of those books will then have some kind of online courses and resources that will be attached to them, so you can take some of that learning a bit more deep. And I'm hoping when the world allows, that I'll get back to some of my volunteering stuff for Hope for Justice over in kind of Cambodia and Uganda. And be able to get some of those trips back in again. So I'm hoping something will happen, at least if not in the next 12 months, then at the end of the next 12 months, I'll be jetting over to do some more volunteering stuff over there. So that'd be great. Yeah.
What can we say? 5 books, wellbeing help for HR, volunteering, traveling the world, breaking down barriers, setting an example, sharing stories. How do you have the energy to do that, Kelly?
I prioritise my well-being.
Exactly, that's the right answer. So yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you with me today on the Self-Aware Entrepreneur. And where can more people find out more about yourself and the Chrysalis Crew? So I'm most active in terms of social media channels. I am most active on LinkedIn. So articles, posts, videos, everything you'll find on there. Chrysalis Crew, you can head over to thechrysaliscrew.com. And if you want to find much more about me, then kellyswingler.com. Yeah, so go and find out more. I mean, to be honest, if this 30 minutes hasn't whetted your appetite to find out more about Kelly, the work that she does, and just find out more, because we didn't even dip into the burnout journey. We didn't dip into a lot of the elements where you've actually taken... We'll have to have more conversations, Lee. Oh, yeah, you know what? You can come back. We'll have a part 2. We can talk about some of the boundaries that you've smashed and some of the barriers that you've burnt down over the years. Awesome. So yeah, thank you for joining me this afternoon. Thank you to the audience for joining me. Appreciate your time, very valuable. And yeah, we'll be back on the Self-Aware Entrepreneur next Wednesday. And until then, thank you to Kelly, and thank you to all for joining me. Wonderful. Thanks for having me, Lee. Take care. Have a great rest of the day, everybody. Thank you. Bye.